And then I was going to post it to our site so we'll have the actual people can see the actual data that I'm sharing. If they want to get into it, they can. So here's my first slide. This is my favorite slide. I used AI to design this. It's still nutty. I don't know how I got these. I don't know how I got these AI figures here, but horned and wings on my football players. That's really strange. Anyway, running backs.
See,
Okay.
if your football player with the wings had the number 14 on it, I would
Yeah.
think this was the sun god.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking too. The old sun god. So anyway, what I've done over the years with this data is I like to just get a feel for what's going on each draft round, or I cut the draft rounds into half because I do 12 team. That's my redraft. That's just the teams I play in. I don't do super flex. I just the traditional PPR situation. And so the figure we're looking at, Dennis, is running backs the round 1 to 14 from years 2015 to 23. So we've got a robust data set here. And what you see in each box is the average of all the running backs drafted in round 1 by end of the year PPR points. And maybe one day we should convert this to MVP or best or comp. That's probably coming. Something, that's one of these things that we need to do. We need interns, ESPN. You put Dennis and I, we can talk here because I can put lots of folks to work. Uh, Dennis and I, we'll put them to work, and we'll have some really neat stuff. But anyway, until we get that, we can't do everything we want to do. But you see this right away, Dennis. These rounds here. And so at the end over here is the average over, what is this, 9 years? So it's the average over 9 years. So I looked across. So I like to look at top down. I think people spend too early in the season bottom up. You focus a little too early on players. You should think about the grand schemes, the distributions, the possibilities, the things as positions, right? And then I'll even go to team levels, kind of how do teams deal with their positions and whatnot. Then I'm down into the players. So I move down, kind of like I take the birthday cake and don't slice it horizontal. I'm doing like a plane, right? I'm taking a layer off at a time, working down. So I get a lot of frosting in round 1, but at the end, down there at round 14, that's what you feed your in-laws that you don't like. You save that old, we call it old bum bum dessert, and you feed it to them so they won't come back next year at Thanksgiving. You give them the old gristle turkey so you don't have to put up with them again, right? Don't you do that? You save all that. Hey,
Oh,
come in there. Hey, you got some beer? Yeah, I got some old skunky beer, some old creep. Get the old can that says beer on it, Dennis. We down here we have KB drugs. If you went back in the old days, I was just, forget all the brand name. We went to the second, it just had a white can with black letters, beer. And you know how green that was, filtered through an old sock down there at Budweiser. And oh, it was skunky. It tastes like old skunk beer, old skunk
oh.
water. So that's what you serve your in-laws and whatnot, so they won't come back. I mean, boy, that Dennis, he sure doesn't feed us good. Because Dennis, if you feed them T-bones and champagnes,
Ooh,
they're not
yeah.
leaving. Dennis, they're still there in the morning. They're on the couch. Man, what's for breakfast? Dennis, it's just like a tick or something. You got to pull them off and throw them out the door, Dennis.
Oh,
Quit being too damn sweet. So there's that's professor's rule. At some point, you can be too damn sweet. So if your in-laws are giving you trouble, you give them the bottom of the deal here, that crusty part of the casserole. It's more rubber than anything else. That'll make sure they won't go back. Or better yet, say, I'm going to bring a dish. Well, that's good. By the time you contributed, instead of me putting out the smorgasbord for you. You know, they like, well, it's steak night?
Oh.
No, it's hot dog night for you. Steak night. Anyway, don't get me going on dealing with the in-laws here. But you had the old can of beer. You had the emergency bum bum rations, you know, the old chips that are out of date, you know, best used by. Yeah, if you don't get to those, you save those, Dennis. That's the Super Bowl party. You pull that here, in-laws, you have this bowl of chips. You know, that'll fix your wagon. Anyway, don't get me going, Dennis. Dr. Bush. Sometimes I'm a little sad. Okay, so round one. So this data, yeah, I know I shouldn't get Dennis going. So Dennis, what I think interesting, if you look at the grand 9 year, look at round one, look at round two. It's like they're the same tier. So
Yes.
this data has driven me to and I kind of know what the wide receivers look like. Long story short, as a group, not as an individual, right? Because, you know, CMC, I mean, if your diary says you're damn good at whatever you're doing, don't listen to me. But as a group, the data would seems to suggest wide receivers round one, and then you can come back and wait for an RB uh, coming out of round two. That's just over the 9 years that has, you know, done better than maybe not. I haven't simulated this. You know, I need to, you know, that's why I need interns. But I'm just saying, looking at the model this way, it suggests that you can find some nice bargains on that first RB in round two, and that might get you, you know, and that's why people were taking Kelsey round one. You could get away with that if you came back with an RB or something, but you probably had to go get a WRWR. So if you took Kelsey, you probably had to go get your first RB round two. You were about locked in round three and four to get at two WRs and hope by round five you might get you an okay quarterback. That was your first five picks. If you went, you know, with something like a Kel, if you deviated from that, you'd have to zigzag. So you need to know your draft plan needs to take into account this kind of thing. So
Yeah,
continuing,
and
yeah. So go
using
ahead. Yeah.
using my best statistical tool, also looking at counts, just simple counts of best, there was a higher percentage of hitting in the second round of drafts, the second, uh, than there was in the first round, the early part of the first round. It makes it goes against your logic, what your logic is telling you, and that was based on 2018 to 23. So, yeah, you can hit on a running back in the second and even in the third rounds. Now, I know your data starts dropping off in the third round.
It's you're into another tier. If you look at rounds three
Yeah.
and four,
Yep.
so if we had to tier this, it'd be rounds one and two, tier one, rounds three and four, tier two. And then it gets a little muddled, which is, I think there's some bargains to be had rounds 5 to 9, Dennis.
Yes. Yep.
But round 10, boy, does it drop
Oh,
like
yeah.
big
Yeah.
time, 30,
Yep.
40, 50%. You're in trouble. If you're picking your RB2 in round 10 or later, folks, unless you're good at it, you're probably going to get a big surprise, and it's not going to be a good one when you're having to write the league safe check to somebody else, because that is not what we want to do here. That makes me cranky. So I
Yeah.
don't
Only
like that.
only two running backs over the last 5 years were drafted outside of that and had a what I consider a top-notch best rating.
Yeah.
That's two out of everybody that was taken. That's a lot of
It's
numbers. So
lean. It's lean.
your percentages were really, really
Lean.
low on hitting.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that's just an overall, and then I of course stained at the top in green and then the bottom in red. So the absolute failures, The deep red shows up round 6. There was one failure in round
Yep.
2017. Starting to get a few more round 7, and you would predict that the further down, the more failures.
Yep.
And it's hard to find the successes. Looks like in some ways, round 6, 7 start petering out. But notice, Dennis, there's something going on in round 9 and for the most, it was in 2016 round 10. 9 and 10 were pretty good, but round 9 there's a spike, and it's almost like I can take, if you wanted to gamble. I'm not saying you should, but in some ways you got your RB1 maybe round 2. If you wanted to wait till round 9, there may be. I'm gonna look see who's coming round 9, because last year, and I forgot who that was. I've got the names listed on my actual lesson plan videos. I've already gone through this and posted it on our site, Dennis, so people can just hear me running my mouth. Not, but I like to have you in here to let you catch things that I'm missing, folks. And then Dennis loves those old boxing whiskers here.
Oh
And
yeah.
here is 15 to 23 yearly end of the season by ADP round. This is just overall. Just the things have been going pretty good lately. Look at 23. You had a lot of floor to ceiling, the bottom whisker. In the last year, the bottom dropped out a lot more than 2022,
Oh yeah.
but the top was as good or better than we've seen. So the last 2 years have been really strong, folks. So just realize, just because last year was great doesn't mean that it can't be 2016 or 15 again. See, when I look at this data, it makes me a little bit more less enthusiastic, a little more guarded, makes me have to do more research. I don't want to be the sucker, on at the poker table. That this tells me the variation in RBs tends to be stronger than some of the other positions, and I don't like that. So your diary, using Dennis metric, using just kind of the patterns that we've seen, need to be thoughtful. But last couple of years have been really good. And so, Dennis, to speed this up a little bit, I know we've been talking too much. This is neat. So I only looked at round 1, 2, 3, and 4 in this figure. Check it out. You see what I'm saying, the tiers?
Oh yeah.
Round 2 is tight. Round 1, lots of variation. So I'm not saying you shouldn't. If you went RB and then WR, that's fine. The trouble with the RB round 1, and I think Dennis's hint by his data, the data shows the variant. That box is long. That's like
Oh
a
yeah.
tall boy beer there. Round 2, it's a lot more compact. In other words, round 2 seems to be less uncertain, and you could still appreciate. Look at the top of the box, 244. You're still competitive with some round 1 folks. You're in that, top 50% of round 1. You got a shot at getting a pretty good one there. And so that's what you've got to decide, your personal uncertainty level, how you draft, what's worked for you. You need to put your diary on top of this here. And of course, I got to change my figure here, make it prettier, Dennis. I'm sorry. Probably should have even, uh, you know, I consider myself a data artist here, and I like to, see the data better. But anyway, then look at 3 and 4, Dennis, completely lower. So what I did, I showed the top blue line is close to the average or the median for rounds 1 and 2. The bottom blue line is the median for rounds 3 and 4. So you can kind of see where the boxes are flying, but in the first 4 rounds. So it is clear if you think you're going to get an RB1 in round 4 or 3, that's a tall order, Dennis. The data says probably at best at the top of the whisker, you're still going to be behind the people that took in round 1 or 2. That's how to me this is a really nice figure here, Dennis. To see what you think about that.
Yeah, and it when I look at my best data, it really corresponds with this, but even more so, it tells you that you have a better likelihood of busting, believe it or not, you have a
Yep.
better likelihood of busting in the first round than you
Yep.
did in the second round. It
Yes.
doesn't make intuitive sense, but
It doesn't.
I think what it means is that we're overdrafting based on recency bias later in the
And
first
maybe
round.
news, maybe a new coach, new
Yes.
toys. Aaron Rodgers shows up, right? That gets everybody stirred up, just like you said, Garrett Wilson. Yeah, if everything works out, it might work out. But the variation there is a little tricky, and people are overbuying that favorite, Dennis. And we know what happens. Favorites only win about a third of the time in the horse races. So you can get surprised because a hot jockey on the favorite, if it was 100%, then everybody just bet on that, right? It'd be 1 to 100 would be the odds. Nobody bet on the other ones because it's a sure thing. It doesn't happen that
And,
way.
and the weirdest thing that I discovered in my study, professor, is that this data is one thing, but the population changes by half round really astounded me as well. As expected, your highest populations in the first 2 rounds, but then your third highest population over the last 6 years
Mhm.
of running backs drafted was in that 85 to 90 ADP. You surged up to 19 of those, which until you get to the very end of the round when I'm combining, I mean, to me, that doesn't make sense. That tells me that the draft philosophy is, hey, we ran out of wide receivers. We're going back to running backs. Maybe the better rationale is not to go all of those running backs, to take your shots a little more evenly placed after you get past the elite guys. There's a lot of weirdness that goes on in these population groups, and I think that reflects the spread of data as well. It gets very chaotic, and it doesn't make any intuitive sense, but it's the psychology of how people draft that is that astounds me. Like 73 to 78, there are only 6 players taken from the running back position over that 6 year period. So one a year, and then it rises up to 19 about a round later. It is weird, the reactions of people, the way that they draft in ADP doesn't fit with the distribution of points, is my point.
Yeah. And so in rounds 5 to 10, I show you here, Dennis, and I kept the blue lines, which is the median for round 1 and 2, the upper, and the median for round 3
Mhm.
and 4. So that puts the context of these box and whiskers for rounds 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Look at 10. Uh-oh. So
Wow.
look at round 6 and 9. Historically, those have popped more. The top of the boxes are superior
Yeah.
to rounds 5, 7, and 8. I almost think people are thinking that second RB in round 6, maybe even the third RB round 9. Maybe they're bounce, they've already got the quarterback, they've already got their tight end, and I don't know what they're doing. I really don't. I'm just saying this is what the data says. So this means when I finally get to start planning my drafts, I'm going to be looking extra hard at round 9 and 6 this year, and certainly, obviously, the earlier rounds, but definitely round 6 and 9. And as far as past 9, uh, unless something's completely being missed, if there's a running back who's a puka out there that Dennis tips me on, then for the most part, I'm looking for those that can, help you in a bye week, or maybe there's an injury and they can move up or something. That is, to me, this data says that's what round 10 and below is for, is to sniff those guys out at that point. So you probably need 2 or 3 solid RBs before you start fishing in rounds 10 and later here, Dennis, by this
Yeah, and
by this
yeah,
data.
and what this backs up to me is that a strategy like my better than zero is
Yes.
better than a typical hero or like a zero RB, where you're not going to take any RBs until around 6 or 7 in a zero
That's
in a
ooh,
legit zero RB. You're not taking them until late. You're against the odds here. You are you're lucky. You are lucky in round 6 and 9 if you're smart enough to grab 2 RB2 level guys. The amount of points that you're giving up on a weekly basis to the top dogs is
is
insane.
yeah, and if you look 2015, I know ZRB ruled, and notice round 1, the average was 110.
Oh yeah.
Last year was
Yeah.
257. So there was a lot of injuries in round 1, 2015. And notice round 6, round 9, but there was even some, there wasn't any supreme super failures to round 12 that year.
Yes.
There was eh, that is what a year looks like that a zero RB could work. So other than maybe that, it's Dennis last couple years, I'm not seeing that pattern. I'm not saying we won't have that pattern, but that's what, to me, that's what you're risking by zero RB. Because look, folks, I made a boatload of money doing zero RB in 2015. Part of the reason was for whatever was going on that year, and it's been a long time. I drafted into that year, right? I think I got lucky anyway. So my sales had lots of wind in them anyway. And
And
last
it's
year I wasn't doing zero RB. I'm just saying I haven't done zero RB seriously in a few years, and you can see the data would not support that.
and the a year like 2015 cements that as being the can't miss strategy, and then it goes on to miss in 2016 and 17 and
It was
18 and
weaker,
19.
let's say,
Yeah.
and then certainly in the last 3, 4 years, look at 2019. Wow, look at that! Everybody was hitting that year, So just be aware, folks. And again, we're recording this. You can see the video if you want to see the data. I just hadn't posted it yet. And my lessons are through with this. This is part 1 of my lesson. I think I think Dennis and I will probably next week we'll do part 2. Dennis, I've got some other. Uh, I think I got the half rounds and some other stuff for us to look at. So we'll have more of the RBs. No use in spoiling all their fun. But anyway, you should definitely look at this video. But definitely, if you're listening to podcasts, thanks. But if you want to actually see the metrics and the actual figures we're discussing, you can check that out as well.
And I'll also have an article coming out soon that will show, using my best tool as I introduce it to everybody formally
Hmm.
in article form. I will show you how many hits and misses you
I
had
like that. That's good.
using that tool by round, by
I
half
like it.
round.
I like
And
it.
it really will show you that while there is some joy later on, that it doesn't always equate. And then I'm going to take that data and I'm going to change it over into that value that bases it on 17 game seasons, because some of what you're seeing with these late spikes of data are the injury replacement guys
Yeah.
who while they don't look valuable in total points, are very valuable when you have to plug and play them for a few weeks. And one of my statistical tools will take the total number of games played out of the equation. So it'll be interesting to see how that data lays out versus ADP as well. So lots of stuff coming when it comes to ADP. We'll talk more about the ADP of running backs next week. The week after that, we'll start with wide receivers. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all the lesson plans from
Sorry about our rant that we went a little long, folks. So we tried to get some data going for you. So I apologize for
and I'll try
my
to keep my
part.
rant.
I started egging, throwing fire on Dennis's fire. So that's not good.
But it's why this combination works. So head on over to scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all the articles that are coming soon and all of the data and all of the lesson plans from the professor. And then head on back here next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.